I welcome you all to the module 3 of the course titled as Applied Positive Psychology. So, this module is about optimism and hope. So, we are discussing these two concepts. So, this is the lecture number 2 of this module and overall it is lecture number 9. So, today we will be talking about the concept of hope and we will also see what are the interventions available for enhancing hope. So, before we talk about today's lecture, let me give you a brief recap of the last lecture. So, the last lecture was also a part of this module. There we talked about the concept of optimism. We discussed what is optimism and how it is important and what kind of benefits it can do in our life. We also discussed different types of optimism. More specifically, we discussed dispositional optimism and learned optimism. We also discussed each of these two types of optimism in detail and the various factors associated with them like dispositional optimism and its roots. We also talked about learned optimism and how explanatory style influences learned optimism. We also discussed something called as an unrealistic optimism and then we discussed sometimes pessimism can also be a good thing, and at the end we discussed some of the research based tools which we can use to enhance optimism. So, in today's lecture we will be talking about another concept which is also part of this same module, that is the hope, and we will talk about what is hope and how it is different from optimism. We will talk about Charles Snyder's hope theory in detail, and we will also discuss when we experience hope in our mental state, how it predicts different aspects or different outcomes or different variables. And then we will discuss some of the research based tools to enhance hope. So, let us start today's lecture. So, hope is very important in human life because it is because of the hope that we keep doing things, we set goals, we reach goals, it is one of the important motivators in our life. So, this is kind of this gist of importance of hope. Hope is summarized in this statement by Martin Luther, that everything that is done in the world is done by hope. So, if people do not have hope for doing something, they will never do anything without hope. So, people whatever they do, because they are hopeful that something is going to come out of it. So, human actions are mostly directed by hope. So, hope is very important and fundamental aspects of human life. So, what is hope? How do we define hope in the field of psychology? So, one of the prominent researcher in this field of hope is Snyder. He is an expert on hope and he did lot of research. He described hope is as the ability to conceptualize meaningful goals, identify pathways to achieve them despite challenges and stay motivated to follow the paths. So, one is goals, identification of goals, meaningful goals, then pathways to reach them and motivation to stay motivated. Okay. So, his definition includes these three important things, that when we are able to identify meaningful goals, we are able to decide what are the paths to take to reach those goals and stay motivated. So, these three constructs gives the sense of hope. So, that is how technically it is defined in terms of operationally in the research based definition that is generally used in the field of psychology. So, we will elaborate more on this definition. So, hope is a goal directed thinking. Whenever we talk about hope, so there is something to achieve, there is some goal is there and whether we are hopeful to achieve that or not. So, hope is always in the context of certain goals that we talk about. So, hope is a goal directed thinking in which the person uses pathways thinking, perceived capacity to find routes to desired goals, basically that is the pathway thinking, and agency thinking, basically it is about requisite motivation to use those routes. Okay. So, basically it is talking about, when we talk about hope, we are talking about obviously a goal and pathways to achieve those goals, and agency thinking means what is the level of motivation we have used to pursue those goals. So, that is something what summarizes the major aspects of the hope. Hope includes all these things. So, in a more simpler terms, we feel hopeful when it is kind of same thing is saying again and again in a different terminology. So, in a simpler term we can say we are hopeful when we know what we want. So, this is one important aspect of hope. what we want, we know what is the goal that I want to achieve. I can think about various ways to reach it when I have various pathways to reach that goal, and C is begin the journey and persist along the way. So, I know what I want to do, I know what are the pathways to that, and I also know what kind of journey, how to persist in that journey in terms of motivation. All these three things makes us hopeful. So, hope has all these three important components. Hopeful thinking consists of the belief that one can find pathways to desired goals and the belief that one can master the motivation. So, hopeful thinking typically includes when you know the pathways and the desired motivation to reach those pathways. So, hope is not merely wishful thinking, that is very important, we need to understand. When you talk about hope, it is not just you are thinking that I am hopeful about something. The real hope comes when hope is associated with the necessary actions, necessary thought processes. So, it is not just merely wishful thinking, instead hope is a cognitive process that enables people to set goals, create plans and stay motivated to reach those desired outcomes even in the face of obstacles. So, that is something very important. So, hope is not just about thinking that something I will achieve, and or only wishful thinking is not considered in a hope sense. So, we are hopeful only when we have a cognitive process to set goals, create plans and stay motivated even when there are obstacles happens. Obstacles comes in front of achieving those goals. So, that is what hope, the gist of hope is all about. So, now the important question comes, the last lecture that we talked about was optimism. Then how these two are different? Many times we people get confused, many times people kind of synonymously use them, but hope and optimism are different concepts. So, let us see what are the differences between these two terms. So, when we talk about hope and optimism, they are like both are related to the future expectations, future expectance, about something, some goals that are related to future, and you have certain expectations which could be positive. So, both are same in that sense, but they differ in their focus and mechanism. So, hope is about having a vision for the future, identifying clear goals and actively working towards achieving them. So, hope is more active in terms of setting goals, identifying pathways, actively pursuing those goals. So, hope has all this ingredient. Optimism on the other hand is a broad belief that things will work out positively in the future, regardless whether you take action or not. So, you are optimistic when you feel that things will turn out positive in the future. Whether you actually work towards it or not, optimism is just a mental state which when you kind of think that things will be positive in the future. So, optimists generally expect good outcomes, but may not necessarily have a concrete plan or actively working towards the goal. So, there is the main difference between hope and optimism. Optimists have a general tendency or general belief that something, or the general expectation that things will be positive in the future, but they may not necessarily have a concrete plan or pathways or work towards that goal. So, that may not always be associated with optimism. Optimism is more of a mental state and expectations. Optimism emphasizes positive expectations rather than actively creating pathways to that. So, that is where hope differs. Hope, when you have a positive expectation, you set a goal and actively work towards it in terms of finding pathways and achieving those pathways and working through these pathways and so on. So, that is how optimism differs from hope. Now, let us look at hope and understand this concept in much more detail using Charles Snyder's hope theory. So, Charles Snyder provides an elaborate breakdown of the processes involved in the hope. So, let us look at what are the important concepts that he talked about. So, Charles Snyder hope theory is a well regarded psychological model that views hope as a powerful goal oriented motivational state rather than just a passive positive feeling, where optimism is mostly a positive feeling and expectations. Hope is a very active goal directed, goal oriented motivational state. I am hopeful, that means I can do things, achieve things, create pathways and those kind of things. So, it is a very actively motivational state about some future goals. Charles Snyder breaks hope into three important components, which we have also mentioned in the definition, that when we talk about hope, there are three important aspects. One is goals. For when we talk about hope, there has to be some goal always. In the context of goal only, we talk about I am hopeful about something. So, there is a goal. Then there is something called as an agency thinking, which is mostly related to your motivation to reach that goals. To what extent you are motivated to reach those goals, what kind of agency aspects you have in terms of reaching those goals, that determines your hope. And the third is pathway thinking, is about what are the different pathways you have in your planning to reach those goals. So, let us break down each of these things in little bit more detail, because these are the three important major kind of core ideas associated with the concept of hope. So, together these components create a robust framework for understanding how individuals can set, pursue and achieve their goals even in the face of obstacles. So, let us see these three important components. So, these are the three important components, and all these components interact with each other and influence each other. So, you have a goal. To reach that goal, you need agency in the sense your motivation level to reach the goals. To reach goals, we also need pathways to achieve those goals, and pathways can also sometimes influence your goals, agency can also influence your goals. So, these are all bidirectional relationship influencing each other. Agency can also influence your pathways, and pathways can influence your agency. All these things can be very intricately interconnected to each other in terms of influencing each other. We will understand this more in detail when we talk about these three concepts in more detail. So, these three components are all the time working when we are considering the concept of hope. So, let us start with the first component, that is goals. So, we cannot talk about hope without any goal. So, hope arises only when there is something to achieve in future, or there is some event or some kind of goal is there. So, goal is the one of the important concepts that is always talked about in the context of hope. So, hope theory says that much of human behavior is driven by goals which act as a mental targets guiding actions. So, human behavior are always guided by certain goals to achieve and so on. Some goals are short term goals, some goals are long term goals, but always we are driven by goals. Whatever we do, most of these actions are associated with fulfilling or achieving certain targets or goals. So, goals are basically certain targets that we set and try to achieve them. Now, all these goals can be verbally expressed or visually imagined and may vary in terms of time frame, specificity, value and importance. So, goals sometimes we very clearly verbally say, okay, this is what I want to achieve, or sometimes it is just a mental image that I pursue. Goals could differ in terms of time frame. Some goals are short term, some goal may be long term. So, time frame may differ. Goals can also differ in terms of specificity. Some goals are very specific, that I want to achieve this target within this month. So, it is very specific. Sometimes goals are very vague. You do not know when you will be able to achieve them. It could be a vague target that you are not much clear about. Goals also differ in terms of values and importance. Some goals may be highly valuable to you, some goals may not be that important, maybe something in the periphery of your mind and so on. So, goals can have all these qualities. Depending on that, it will influence human behavior. So, initially Snyder suggested that only consciously valued goals guide behavior, but later research indicates that non-conscious goals can also play a role. So, Snyder initially says only when we are very consciously thinking about some goals, then it guides our behavior. But research also shows sometimes non-conscious goals or goals which are not very clear or conscious in our mind can also guide our behavior. So, many times we have a very unconscious ideas about something and it actually directs our behavior. For example, some people may very unconsciously like someone and they may not be very conscious about it, and then what happens, they will try to behave in certain way to impress that person, even though consciously they may not happen. So, there is some goal to impress a person, but it may not be very conscious, but that unconscious tendencies or some goal can direct their behavior in terms of actually doing something to impress that person and so on. So, like this, so goals can be conscious and unconscious, but mostly obviously when goals are very conscious, you have a very clear cut plans and so on, but unconscious goals also can guide our behavior. Snyder also distinguished between approach goals and avoidance goals. So, goals, some goals that we want to achieve target, most of the goals are like we have set a target and you want to achieve them. So, these are like approach goal, you move towards those goals step by step. Some goals are avoidance goal, when you want to avoid something, that is also a goal. So, this is something which I do not want to go near or something like that. So, you want to prevent something in your life, you want to prevent, let us say, certain diseases, so that will be like avoidance goals. You have a goal to prevent, let us say, cancer or something, or prevent diabetes or whatever. So, these are like, you are not approaching towards that goal, you are preventing yourself from certain targets. So, goals can be approach oriented, goals can be avoidance oriented. And regarding goals, research suggests that hope is strongest when people perceive a moderate chance of achieving their goals. Hope, becomes much more strongest in terms of hope becomes highly influential when people think there is a moderate chance of achieving these goals. If the goal is too easy, obviously then obviously there is, you do not have to be hopeful, because then you can achieve it, you can achieve it. When the goal is too difficult, probably you will not be hopeful, you think I cannot achieve that, but when goal is moderate, people, then hope mostly comes into the picture. So, you are hopeful that I can achieve that and so on. When it is too difficult, it is impossible to achieve, then you cannot be hopeful. When it is too easy, then also there is no need for hope. So, hope becomes strongest, or this whole concept of hope becomes relevant when goal is, there is a moderate chance to achieve that goal. So, this is one important concept which is discussed in the context of hope, goal. Next is agency thinking is another important aspect to the whole context of hope. So, agency thinking is the motivational aspect of hope. Hope is not just about thinking to achieve something, or only thinking something positive is going to harm. You have to be motivated to achieve that. So, that is called agency thinking. So, it reflects that the individual's determination and self-belief in their ability to achieve their goal. So, you have high agency thinking when you believe that you are able to achieve the goal. So, that is your agency. You will be highly motivated to achieve them because you think you can achieve them. If you think you cannot achieve something, obviously your agency thinking will be very less, and you will not be hopeful. When you think you have the ability, your motivation will increase, and with the increase of motivation, your hope also increases. So, hope with high agency thinking believes that they have capacity to influence outcomes, take actions and continue their efforts when faced with adversity. So, agency thinking becomes high when you are, so with high agency thinking your hope also increases. When you think that you can influence outcome, you can achieve the outcomes, you can take actions, you can put effort even at the face of difficulties and challenges and so on. So, all this thing will increase your sense of hope. This sense of willpower provides the energy to pursue goals even when the progress is slow and challenged. So, this agency thinking gives you energy, motivation to pursue the goals and so on, and that makes you hopeful. For example, a student with high agency thinking might tell themselves, I can do this, I will find a way, or I will keep trying until succeed. So, these are the statements which are related to high agency thinking. That means the person is confident that he or she will be able to achieve the goals and find ways to achieve their goals. So, that is an example of high agency thinking, and it is related to high hope. More agency thinking you have, more hopeful you will become. The third component is pathways thinking, which is also very important ingredient for hope. So, pathway thinking is the cognitive process of developing multiple strategies or routes to reach desired goals. So, we can only thinking about or getting motivated about a goal is not enough. You should have a clear pathways to reach them. That is also very important. You may be highly motivated, you may have set goals and so on, but you do not know how to achieve that. Then your hope cannot sustain. So, you have to have a very clear strategies and routes to reach those desired goals. So, it represents our ability to think creatively and flexibly about how to overcome barriers and find alternative routes. You should have plans for multiple routes. So, if you proceed to path A and you face obstacles, you should have a path B also, because then path A will not work. So, alternative pathways, different pathways to reach those goals. The more pathways you have, the more hopeful you will become, even at the face of difficulties. When one pathway closes, you can have another pathways. So, this component involves planning, problem solving, adaptability. People with strong pathway thinking do not give up when they encounter challenges or roadblocks, but instead brainstorm alternative ways to achieve the goals. So, pathway thinking give you more hope simply because when you are not able to achieve a goal through certain pathways, you will find another pathways. So, it will make you more hopeful. So, pathway thinking gives you hope. So, that is why it is an important component of hope. For example, in the same student in the earlier case fails a test, strong pathway thinking will help them consider different approaches like studying more effectively, seeking tutoring or asking for help from teachers and so on. So, these are like different pathways by which you can achieve better marks in an exam. So, like this, if one pathway is not working, so the student will think about some other pathways and so on. The more pathways you have, the more hopeful you will become in terms of achieving those goals. So, Snyder emphasizes that hope requires both agency, that is motivation, as well as pathways, different pathways or routes to achieve those goals. Together, they create a dynamic feedback loop. Pathways give individuals the confidence to believe their goals are achievable. When you have clear-cut pathways, it gives you confidence that you can achieve the goals. Agency provides the motivation and persistence needed to pursue those pathways. And to go and walk those pathways, you need motivation. Agency gives that motivation. In other words, people feel hopeful when they believe they can find ways to reach their goals and are motivated to pursue them. So, this is how these three components of hope interact with each other. So, just little bit more explanation on how each influences other. While pathway and agency looks like a distinct aspect of hope, they interact very closely when changes in one impacting the others. So, if pathways and agency thinking and goals, they all are connected to each other. So, obviously, if one changes, other will also be influenced. So, there is a constant interaction going on between these three things, particularly pathways and agency things. For example, when someone identifies pathways they believe will lead to a meaningful goal, their agency or motivation to pursue that goal tends to increase naturally. So, naturally when you have a very clear cut pathways, you can see the pathways clearly, it will increase your motivation also, because you know where to go and how to go. So, pathways will increase your motivation. So, if pathways are increasing, pathway thinking increases or is kind of, you have a clear cut pathway thinking, it will also lead to higher motivation or agency thinking also. People are more likely to feel enthusiastic about a goal when they have a concrete plans to achieve it. Similarly, if someone feels highly motivated about a goal, they are more likely to invest time and energy to create effective pathways. On the other hand, when you are highly motivated, so there is a high agency thinking, then this motivation will also help you to find pathways. When you are not motivated, you will not seek pathways to achieve them. So, high motivation will also help you to find out different pathways. So, pathways will facilitate agency thinking will facilitate pathway thinking. So, this is how both are interacting with each other. However, reverse can also happen. In the opposite direction things can also go. If one increases, other increases. If one decreases, other will also decrease. So, if someone start working towards a goal, but struggle to develop pathways, their motivation will also go down. If they are not able to find proper clear cut pathways to achieve the goals, after some time their motivation will also go down. Likewise, if they initially generate several pathways, but cannot summon enough motivation, they may start doubt their feasibility of the pathways and they may lose hope. So, even if they find pathways, but they are not able to clearly walk in the pathways or by and not some of these pathways are not feasible for them, then it will decrease the hope and agency thinking. So, this downward spiral can be the root of hopelessness. So, when there is a block in your pathways, when there is a block in your motivation, that will also lead to hopelessness. Now, let us see the model that is given by Snyder. This is kind of explained in terms of different components in the different phases, how hope works in the real life context. So, this is called as the feedback and feed forward function in hope theory. So, this is in detail, the different aspects are given here. So, this model has three important phases. One is learning history. What is your background in terms of whether you will be hopeful or not? What is your learning experience? So, that is your learning history, phase 1. Then the pre-event, before the event happens, whatever goal you want to achieve, before you start working towards that, what happens at that phase? And the third one is event sequence. Once you start working towards the goal, how things unfold and how do basically in all these phases hope works out. So, there are three components to this model. One is learning history will influence your hope, pre-event in terms of the nature of goals and so on, what kind of goals you are pursuing, that will also influence your hope, and what actually happens when you start working towards a goal, how hope manifests and what are the dynamics associated with all these things. Let us break down this model. So, this model shows as we move from left to right, there are three phases. One is individual's learning history, then comes pre-event phase, and the last one comes the event sequence phase. So, let us see these three components one by one. So, the first important thing in the context of hope or whether you become hopeful or not, the factors that will influence is one's learning history. What kind of things you have learned in the context of hopefulness. So, an individual learning history plays very important role in forming foundation for agency and pathway thinking. It begins in the childhood. So, whether you become hopeful or not hopeful can also be influenced by your past history, particularly whatever you have learned from the childhood. How do you look at pathways thinking, how do you look at agency thinking, all these things, motivations and the flexibility in terms of creating pathways, these are not, many times is not just based on the context you are working in, your thought processes are also influenced by your learning history. So, pathway thinking, the ability to connect events start when infants make association between co-occurring events. From the childhood it starts, child learns to work, find out different pathways to achieve small goals, whatever they think in that period. So, it starts from that childhood period only. Even at around age 1, the children recognize themselves as separate from others, which includes their agency thinking. When they feel they are a separate individual, child start in terms of initiating actions and doing things on their own. So, that is where agency thinking starts and influence events and so on. So, pathway and agency thinking develop iteratively and are linked to emotional response based on pure goal experiences. Whatever experiences you had in terms of achieving goals or failure in achieving goals will influence you emotionally and influence what is your thought processes in terms of pathway thinking and agency thinking. They can influence your emotional reaction based on whatever past experiences you have. So, those with positive history of achieving goals, for example, people who have been successful in achieving goals earlier, they will feel more confident in working towards a new goal because they had positive emotional experiences in the past. On the other hand, people who had more failures in achieving goals, they will be less confident, less hopeful in achieving some new or working towards new goals. So, they will be less hopeful as compared to people who has a history of success and achievement. So, this is where in this model it shows initially in the learning history phase, your pathway thinking, your agency thinking, they are all developed during your childhood experiences and so on, past history of successes and failure in achieving goals. All these things will be influenced in your it will come from your learning history also, and these all will influence emotions. In a sense, when you have more successes in terms of achieving goals, you will feel more positive in terms of it will have a more positive emotions and confidence. On the other hand, more history of failures and so on will make you people more less confident and so on, that will also influence you emotionally. So, this is the thing that is mostly come in the learning history phase. So, learning history will influence your emotions, your agency thinking, pathway thinking in the present context also, whatever you have learned earlier. So, this is the first phase in terms of looking at hope. Second is pre-event phase, means before actually you start working towards a goal, just before that. What happens and what plays important role. In the pre-event phase of goal pursuit, individual assesses outcome value of a goal to determine if it is important enough to proceed. In the pre-event phase, generally people decide whether this goal is even worth pursuing. Is it important for me? If some goal is important, obviously, then obviously motivation and hopefulness will be much more relevant in this context. If a goal doesn't have much outcome value, then obviously the motivation and other thing will be much less. Hope may not be of much importance in this context. If so, if something is very relevant, then they enter the event sequence. So, when goals are important, then only we act on them. So, the pre-event phase, basically this whole evaluation of things happens. This evaluation of goal in terms of its importance is analyzed. Okay. So, once the goal is perceived as important, then the person enters in the actual event sequences. So, this interaction allows for ongoing assessment, helping individual decide if their efforts are still worthwhile. If the goal's value is later appraised as insufficient, they may choose to discontinue the pursuit. Sometimes you start working, but then you feel that it is not worth it, then people will discontinue and so on. All these things can happen while deciding or assessing the value of a goal and so on. So, this ongoing evaluation is essential. A true value may only become clear after initiating pursuit. Sometimes you understand the value of a goal only when you start working towards it. So, this whole evaluation can go in the actual event sequence phase also. So, if you see in the model, so in the pre-event phase, the outcome value is judged, and this outcome value will influence pathway thinking and agency thinking. To what extent you are motivated, to what extent you will seek pathways will depend on what is the importance of the goal. The more important, the more motivation, more pathway thinking, more agency thinking will happen. The last phase is event sequence phase. Here actually when we start working in the actual goal, during the event sequence phase of a goal pursuit, an individual's goal specific pathways and agency interact continuously, influencing the likelihood of success. So, there in the event phase, the pathway thinking, agency thinking continuously interact while pursuing the goal. You kind of gather your motivation, you see pathways to reach them, and so sometimes pathway thinking will influence your agency thinking will also influence your pathway thinking. So, there is a constant interaction going on in the actual event sequence phase, and that slowly then one achieve the goals ultimately. So, this process creates a feedback loop. The appraisal of success or failure along with the positive negative emotions impacts future perceptions of one's ability to create pathways and sustain agency in similar domains. So, sometimes while pursuing the goals, it will also influence your emotions. So, repeated setbacks can diminish hope in the domain, such as academics. Obstacles or stressors which may hinder goal achievement also trigger emotion that affect pathways and agency. So, emotion can also come into the picture when you are able to kind of if there is a setback, it will also influence your agency thinking, it will also influence your motivation and so on. So, there is a constant ongoing interaction that happens between agency thinking, pathway thinking and emotional impact of all these things. While stressors initially elicit negative emotions, high hope individuals are more likely to feel positive emotion as well, viewing obstacles as challenges. So, sometimes obstacles can create negative emotions for the temporary phase, but people who are highly hopeful, where there is a high agency thinking or high pathway thinking, they will beat that negative emotion and feel positive emotions and see it as a challenge and so on. So, in the goal pursuit, emotions are from unexpected events, whether positive or negative, can significantly impact motivation. So, while pursuing goals, so many things will influence emotions and hopefulness, obstacles and certain surprises, whatever, everything will influence. For example, a surprise like reconnecting with a friend or learning of their hardship can alter the individual's motivation, either enhancing or diminishing it, or may shift focus to new goals such as helping the friend. So, you are kind of pursuing a goal. So, hearing some friend's story or their story of hardship can motivate you to achieve your goals. So, it will enhance your agency thinking. Or if you see that someone else also pursue the same path and they failed again and again, it may also diminish your motivation and so on. So, all these things, surprises, all these factors will come into the picture. These emotions are swiftly integrated into ongoing goal pursuit, influencing motivation and pathways to achieve those goals. So, emotion will also all the time interact. So, this illustrates how emotions from unrelated events are often assimilated in the current goals pursuit, shaping its outcome. Sometimes this emotion can come from totally unrelated events also, can also influence your present mood will be influenced, which can also influence your goal pursuit and so on. So, in summary, the hope model consists of both feed forward and feedback mechanism that influences person's success in any given goal pursuit. So, this sequence of influence both by dispositional characteristics of the individual and characteristics of the specific situation. So, all these complex factors can come into play in the real life when we pursue goals, and whether we become hopeful or not hopeful, so many all these factors can play a role. So, this was the model that talks about the different aspects of hope and how different aspects in a context can influence. Now, let us address the question, what hope predicts? When someone becomes hopeful, what are the things we can predict about those people? Now, hope scale score have been shown to predict positive outcomes across different areas like academics, sports, health, adjustment and therapy. Now, this is very important because hope is not a passive thing. When you are hopeful, that means you have a strategy, you have motivation to achieve those things. So, this can have a very clear and significant impact on the real life outcomes in the various domains of life like academics, sports, health, adjustment, therapy and so on. Everywhere hope will determine a lot of things. In academics, students with higher hope scale score at college entry tend to have better GPAs or basically grades and are more likely to stay in the schools. So, hope was a very strong determinant in terms of college performances and pursuing a course or persisting in the course or staying in the school and so on. Research suggests that while other factors like self-efficacy, engagement relate to academic success, hope uniquely predicts even when academic history is controlled. Even other factors can influence academic success, obviously like your confidence, your engagement with the course and so on. Even if you control all this, hope still uniquely predicts. So, hope has a very important contribution to academic success, staying in the course and so on. Hope is also linked to traits like grit. With high hope correlates with a better academic result irrespective of socioeconomic status or gender. Hope is also connected to other factors which are important for achieving goals like grit. Grit is basically a concept which is related to pursuing a long term goal and maintaining motivation. So, if many people can achieve short term goals, but long term goals requires a lot of motivation and sustained effort. So, hope is also connected to that kind of pursuit of long term goals, which is basically conceptualized in terms of grit. Among different racial and ethnic groups, hope combined with ethnic identity predicts academic success, with those high in ethnic identity often being high in hope. So, there are many other contexts also like ethnic groups also hope has been found to predict success, particularly in the academic context. In sports also, the higher hope scale score predicted better performance among athletes beyond their natural ability rating. Obviously, in the sports performance depends on your ability, but if you keep ability away or control the effects of ability, then hope can also kind of there can be an additional impact of hope in terms of enhancing performance, as hope influences decision making related to potential outcomes distinct from just optimism. only you are just thinking that something is good going to happen. So that is more like a passive state, where actually things may not be positively actually happening if you are not working towards it, but hope is more of a actively pursuing, and there is an active involvement in it. So this highlights hope's unique role in achieving goals even in challenging situations where optimism may be limited. So in that context, hope is more important in terms of achievement of goals, where just mere optimism it is better than that, because there is an active involvement. So it can predict goal achievement much better way than construct like optimism and so on. So higher hope scale scores are associated with the range of other positive adjustment outcomes. So in context of performance, we have seen it predicts performance outcomes positively. In the context of adjustment outcomes, including a greater happiness, life satisfaction, positive emotions, persistence, self-worth, adaptability, better social relationship, all this also has been positively connected with hope. Hope also appears to be a core element of driving positive changes within psychological treatment, even in online counseling setting and so on. So therapy context, counseling context, also hope plays very important role. If a client is hopeful, then the impact of this counseling and therapies are much more likely to be higher, because if they are not hopeful, they are obviously that hope creates the motivation to cooperate with the suggestions and instructions. So that will have a positive impact. So research by other people like Feldman and colleagues also shows that agency component of hope is particularly effective in predicting goal attainment in college student, with agency often showing stronger predictive power than pathways and overall hope. So some research suggests that agency thinking is more important than pathways thinking in terms of certain specific contexts of like academic achievement in college and so on. So hope has also been linked to physical health. So we talked about some of the mental health dimensions and well-being. In the context of physical health also, some research shows helping individuals cope with stress, chronic pain, illnesses such as breast cancer and so on. Hope has also has a positive impact on all this physical health aspect also. Additionally, hope supports well-being in older adults, providing a future oriented outlook and improved resilience in facing limited time. So it also helps you to become more resilient, and also it supports well-being of older adults. Hope has many positive impact on them. It improves resilience, especially facing when they have limited time, death is near and so on. Hope plays very important role in their well-being and so on. So a lot of this research shows a positive impact of hope, and it has much more clear impact on outcomes and some of the health dimensions, simply because hope is a very active concept. You are not just thinking about something, you are actually working towards it. So in that context, it is very important concept in which can have an impact in various aspects of our life. Now at the end, let us talk about some of the research based tools for hope. Since hope is important, so can we do something in terms of actually enhancing it in our daily life? Are there any such intervention strategies? Let us look at some of the possible interventions. One way of doing it is something called as a hope profiling. We can do hope profiling for ourselves, and then that will also give more clarity and make us more hopeful in our real life context. So one is something called as a storytelling exercise, which is a part of hope profiling. So it can be done like this. So write 5 narratives about your past or present goal pursuits. So basically in this storytelling exercise, you write about few narratives about some of the goals that you have worked towards in the past and the present. So it could be some past goals, or it could be the some of the present goal that you are working on. So you can write about them, maybe 5 narratives or maybe less, whatever, depending on that, but you think about some of such goal pursuits and write about them. So in each story, based on each goal, discuss how you establish your goals. So this is what you have to write in the goal storytelling exercise, that how did you set those goals, why did you set these goals, or how did you set those goals, what are the paths you took to pursue them, how did you pursue them, pathways, and sources of motivation and how you yourself motivated yourself to achieve those goals. You can draw from various areas of your life for these narratives. So, it could be just just to look at or make it clear what are the goals you have set, or maybe you are setting in the present context, why you establish those goals, how you establish them, what are the factors influence in setting those goals, what are the pathways you set for achieving those goals, and in terms of moving towards those pathways, how did you motivate yourself. So, that will be the part of the story telling narrative that you want to write about few goals, maybe in the recent past or in the present. So, that is called storytelling exercise. Now, while doing this exercise, you can also work in terms of specifically listing out. So, after you making these narratives, you can specifically also write about the different components of hope. So, you can create 3 columns on a paper, and based on the narratives that you have written, you can write one is goals, one column is for goals, another column is for pathways, and another column is for obstacles. So, write in details about each goals, what are the pathways and what are the obstacles. So, these 3 things you mention column wise. Under the goals column, list goals related to one of your strength, whatever goals you have worked or important goals of your life. In the pathways column, you can identify at least 3 pathways that you can take or you have taken to achieve them, or even for future also you can think about 3 pathways, and then write about at least 1 obstacles that can come while pursuing that goal. So, basically you are clearing all the components of hope, clearly writing about them. So, basically here you are writing goals, here you are writing pathways, here you are writing obstacles. So, for example, your goal could be weight loss. For example, you want to lose your weight. So, let us say your goal is you want to lose some weight, let us say whatever it is, maybe 10 kg, whatever it is, you have certain goals, let us say. Now, what are the pathways you can take? At least write 3 pathways by which you can achieve this. For example, general thing could be like controlling diets, it could be exercise, this could be different pathways, it could be lifestyle management, which may include things like controlling your stress, sleep patterns and so on, all these things. So, this may be for example 3 pathways you can achieve take for weight loss journey. What could be obstacles here? Let us say at least one major obstacle could be maintaining motivation. This could be a biggest obstacle in terms of following these pathways. So, like this so one can list out for future goals, and to learn from past goals also one can do this exercise. So, that is where you can list out using these 3 columns. So, this is the part 1 about listing goals from the narratives, and part 2 one can also reflect more into the motivational part, because that is more important in terms of how it can influence your goal achievement. Consider how you will maintain your motivation to achieve your goals. So, write about them, how can we maintain those motivation, who can support you in this endeavor, what additional resources can you utilize to help you succeed, what are the important other resources you can utilize to help you succeed, what kind of other support you can get. So, you reflect on this motivational aspects in terms of achieving goals. So, mostly it can be done for some of the goals that you are setting for yourself. So, you can do this kind of exercise, it will clear what are the obstacles, what are the pathways I can do, how to maintain motivation, and also. So, if things are clear in your mind, you are more likely to achieve them and become more hopeful about them. So, this is one such exercise one can do. Another exercise is also very similar and connected, is called mapping your pathways. So, as we already mentioned, the key component in hope is here focus is more on creating pathways, because more clear pathways we have about achieving goals, more hopeful we become to achieve them. So, this particular exercise is related to clearing, mapping different pathways to achieve different goals. So, pathways refers to plans or strategies you develop to achieve your goals. You can construct a pathway for nearly any goal in your life using method called pathway mapping. So, this is an exercise to create a pathways for achieving goals. So, this is called pathway mapping. So, how to do that we will just talk about it here. So, one is called creating your pathway map. Is how to do that. Start with a clean sheet of paper, draw a vertical timeline from bottom to the top of the page, level the bottom of the timeline with the word now, and then top with a goal you want to achieve in coming months. So, you have a goal to achieve in the future, let us say after 1 month, and what is your position in the present moment. So, now what are you now? So, that is something very important. So, basically in a clean sheet you can just write it like this. So, in the bottom of the page you can write now and write a vertical line, and the goal that you want to achieve you write it on the top. So, and in between you can write about different steps that you can take to achieve that goal, steps and obstacles and so on. So, that is the basic idea behind pathway mapping. So, once first you write now what is your position and what is your goal, let us say after 1 month, whatever goal you have. In between identify the steps, think about steps you need to reach your goal and write them along the timeline in a chronological order. So, first step what I need to do, then second step what I need to do, third step what I need to do, chronologically one by one, not randomly. If you wish you can include approximate date also next to each step to generate guidelines to assist your planning. So, you can do this exercise in terms of very clearly chronologically planning one step, first step, second step, third step, and whatever it will lead to the achievement of the goals at the top. Then in the each step also address obstacles. Next to each step you can note at least one potential obstacle that can be an obstacle in achieving that goal. So, each step may have many obstacles that you need to face. So, list them also. Along with the strategy, also write about what is the strategy to overcome this obstacle. So, if this obstacle comes, what I should do. So, you can list that also in each step. Use a pencil to for this exercise. So, you can easily erase and rearrange step as needed. Obviously, your plans and steps may change as we proceed. So, you can always change, make it more dynamic and so on. Another important thing is be flexible in the pathways in terms of sometimes one pathway may not work. So, be flexible in terms of changing steps and other thing. So, remember these pathways are not fixed. In real life things always changes. They can be revised as you encounter new challenges, uncover new interest, learn more about yourself and so on. You should also have an alternative designs. Your pathways map does not have to follow traditional timeline format. Feel free to creatively design it in so many ways, whatever resonate along with you and so on. So, one example is given here. So, basically I am just listing here stepwise, but this is how you have to do is you have to kind of in a page you have to write write a vertical line, you have to write it here now, and here you have to write the goal, whatever goal you have in the vertical top line. So, in the bottom you have to write now at the present moment. So, what is your current status? Let us say the goal is to, it's the same example we will take, weight loss. Let us say your goal is weight loss 10 kg, let us say in 1 month, whatever it is, whatever timeline one can set, that is your goal, to lose 10 kilo in 1 month, whatever it is, one can have a goal like this. Now, what is your present status? Your weight is, let us say here it is written weight 180 pound. Okay. Major things why your weight is more, maybe you can write about sedentary lifestyle, unhealthy eating habits. So, this is your present status. So, you can write all these things, what is your present status, what is your present weight, and why, what is the reason basically why you have more weight. So, you can write about them. Then you can have a steps like step 1 here. Okay. So, step 1 you can write Set a realistic meal plan. So, 1 week from now, so that is your target. In 1 week, this is your target. Realistic meal plan you have to create. Now, what is the obstacle here? Difficulty in planning and preparing healthy food. This can be an obstacle because it is not so easy to maintain a healthy meal every day. Strategy is how can you overcome this obstacle? Dedicate 1 day each week to meal prepare and use simple recipes to ease the process. So, you can overcome this by creating simple recipes which can be easily made and so on. So, like this, step 1, 1 week time, realistic meal plan, obstacle and how to overcome that. Step 2, you can write again what you need to do. So, step 2, start regular exercise routine 2 weeks from now. So, that is your target. Obstacle, low energy, low motivation to work out. Strategy, how can you overcome this? Start with short enjoyable workouts like walking and dancing and gradually increase the duration and intensity. So, this is your step, obstacles and strategy to overcome like this. So, you can have step 3, let us say track food and exercise 1 month from now. You can have a obstacle can be forgetting to log meals and workouts. Use mobile apps strategy or journal to make tracking convenient and set reminders to help maintain consistency. So, this could be a strategy. Let us say step 4, incorporating strength training 2 months from now, whatever timeline you can set. Obstacle is intimidation at the gym or uncertainty about exercise. You may not feel comfortable in going to gym and so on. Strategy, attend a beginners class to follow online tutorials to learn proper techniques and build confidence and so on like this. So, this is how one can write a pathway mapping. Start with the present position, step 1, step 2, step 3 whatever and then how to reach the goals and each step what are the obstacles and how to overcome them. So, you can clearly map a pathway map in terms of creating a pathway and becoming more hopeful in terms of achieving goals and so on. So, other steps are also given. Similarly, one can take other steps like evaluate progress and adjust plans 3 months from now. Reach goal weight of 160 pound. So, present status was 180 pounds. So, the target was set for 4 months from now. The obstacle was maintaining weight loss after reaching the goal. After reaching the goal also then you have to be motivated to maintain that. Strategy, establish a sustainable maintenance plan including regular exercise, mindful eating habits and so on. So, like this one can create an elaborate plan according to the needs and the lifestyles and the situations of one's life and so on. So, this is how we can plan and do some interventions more strategically, more clearly with steps in terms of reaching goals and becoming more hopeful in life in terms of whatever things we are doing in our life. So, these are some of the possible strategies and intervention we can use in our daily life. So, with this I stop here. Thank you.